Today, we're going to talk about how to write the best resume possible so you can get that job that you really want to get. In order for us to really do a deep dive into that conversation, I have a special guest with me today. Chrissy, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Sue, and thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Chrissy James. I am the owner and founder of James Career Readiness, an independent consulting firm based on career preparation and resumes, cover letters. I've worked with clients from all walks of life, helping them from the first job to seasoned professionals in all aspects of the career preparation world. I am also a adjunct career counselor at the University of New Hampshire, and I've worked at the George Washington University in the same capacity as well. So I've really enjoyed. I've worked with over 1,200 clients and helped them along their journey. So it's been really exciting, and certainly resumes being the crux of the most of the conversations that we have. I'm really glad for this opportunity to talk about that with you.
Perfect. So you are exactly who we should be talking to. Um, and one of the things that we really try to do with this YouTube channel is to go beyond just a general advice, like put your best self forward. Well, how do you do that? And so on. So I have a whole series of questions ready for you, Chrissy, so we could do a deep dive into this. So let's start off with some of the basics. Based on your work, your experience, your expertise, what are the three main must-dos when writing a resume?
Absolutely. And it's something I always say to my students and my clients is, you ask people, 10 different people about their resume. So they're going to tell you 10 different things. So this advice really comes from years of experience and, you know, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Lots of great research and all of that. So some people may have other ones, but these are the ones that I have seen time and again that are the best. So the first one is to tailor your resume.
Mm,
A lot of people will write one resume and they'll send it out for every opportunity. And I really think that does a disservice to the person who's writing it because job seekers are multifaceted and employers are looking for lots of different things. So if you are just sending out one version of your resume, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Really important to look at the job description. May seem obvious, but to really look at the keywords and to make sure that you incorporate them as authentically and truthfully as possible in your resume to really show and highlight your skills. I tell a lot of people to create a master resume. I think that's an essential piece. To have one resume, doesn't matter how long it is. There's no rules, one page, two page, make this 10 pages and put all the experience that you've ever had. Then, when you find a job opportunity that you're interested in, tailor it. What do I mean by that? I mean, take the experiences that you have that are the most relevant, take the skills, highlight those pieces. If you think of your resume as a marketing tool, that's what you want to enhance. The resume is going to get you the interview. The interview itself will get you the job. And I know you've worked with some experts on interviewing skills and how to do that. So, really focusing on the resume as being your marketing tool is great. So, tailoring, number one. Number two is to highlight your experience. So, what I mean by that is showing as much impact as possible with every bullet point that you have. So, quantify, qualify each experience. So anywhere that you can add numbers. I worked with 100 clients in a week. I managed a budget of $3 million, or I oversaw, 10 people, just to give examples, or I was training 10 people. It really helps get more depth to that experience. So, training one person versus training 2,000 people, it certainly makes a difference. Quantifying, so talking about who your audience is. So if you're looking for a job in childcare, you want to talk about your experience with that age group. If you're in marketing, you want to be able to talk about whether you're in-house or whether you were, external. and who your clients were. Um, if you're doing presentations, was it to high level executives? Anywhere that you can add that information and really showcase your impact. So that would be number two. And then the third one is really has been changing lately, and I think has really come on the scene in the last 5 or so years. But making your resume applicant tracking system friendly, ATS. I'll refer to
Mm,
that quite a bit, I think, in our conversation as it comes up so often. Um, you want your resume to be clear, concise, and clean. So the resume, sometimes people get really fancy with their templates. And when you have an applicant tracking system, to those who are unfamiliar with what that is, it's a resume screening tool. And companies are using them more and more. In fact, all the large companies are using them, and they're using them in ways to catch the keywords that they're looking for in the position. It's to, when they've got 20,000 resumes, it's to whittle them down. Um, and the ATS systems have trouble with fancy fonts and colors and sometimes even columns. Now we know that AI is changing, technology is changing very quickly, but right now that is some of the biggest issues is resumes aren't going through just because of formatting. So I prefer clean, clear, concise, obviously industry dependent, um, but even, colored text and things like that, I think are those are the three really most important things. Obviously, there's more to add that we can get into, but tailoring, quantifying, qualifying, and making your resume ATS friendly.
mm, very helpful. And this is why a conversation like this is so useful because, ATS isn't something we had to worry about 5 years ago, 10 years
That's
ago.
right.
And it's definitely something we need to worry about now and consider that way.
Yes.
Uh, makes
And I'm making sure that people are using their resume to the best of their ability and really enhancing because people have so much great experience that I think often gets lost.
Mm, absolutely. And the way, looking at your resume as a marketing tool for yourself makes perfect sense. Because you want to market the part that is most relevant to the job and market in a way that's easy and simple to understand because a system may be screening your resume. And then you want to highlight the aspects and quantify as much as you can so that people just don't take your word for it. They actually see some numbers and results. Um, so, on the other side of all of that, what are the three don't do's? Please don't do these on your resume.
Yes. And that, again, I was thinking about this, you know, don't not tailor your resume. I will go into three other ones, but on that other one, that being like really the most
Don't keep it too
important
generic.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first one I would say is don't overcram or overload your resume. So as we're talking about it being your marketing tool, you want to think about your your real estate that you have. You only have so much, and whether it's everyone is up in the air about 1 page, 2 page. I know CEOs that can have 1 page for their resume, but that doesn't mean that you have to be stuck to that. However, you want to utilize the space that you have, and again, that goes back to that having a master resume and being able to really cultivate the most important aspects of your resume. Um, that doesn't mean that people aren't going to know your other work because you can talk about those in your interview. You can talk about that on your LinkedIn page. That's a great place that really is your resume 2.0 because you can add so much more to it. So I think people get really afraid of people thinking, well, are they going to think about job gaps or time gaps in there where you really want to focus on the most relevant experience to that job. I even put relevant work experience. It's just that one word that can make all the difference as opposed to, all the work that you've ever done. Um, so really just not over cramming and overloading. We talked about the applicant tracking systems again. With formatting, sometimes people will have multiple columns. They'll have their work experience here and then they'll have skills or certifications over here. And that can get very confusing for the applicant tracking systems. But also as a human reader, thinking about reading left to right in the English language, and top to bottom, that is how we typically read. And so you wanting to make sure that you are following that time. So that would be the number one. The number two would be using generic language. So don't use generic language. What do I mean by that? A lot of people will write, I'm responsible for, or just responsible for, managed, those kinds of very generic words that get lost in terms of what does that really mean? So, every aspect of your job you're responsible for. But one of my favorite things to use is Bloom's taxonomy. And it has this incredible list of action verbs. And I really suggest that people lean into it because it can just get more in depth, and really specify more what you're looking for. So those really important action verbs of you coordinated, you activated, you led, presented, even leading. I think people get a little bit overdone with that, but being able to just catch those specific skills. Um, and then the third, don't forget to proofread.
Mm,
You know, I think that gets overlooked so often because we have all of these tools to catch spelling mistakes, to catch grammar, but oftentimes you can have another space or you can have a word that's, one letter off, and that can make all of the difference. And, I've been a hiring manager and things like that can really make or break, because
mhm,
it shows, especially if there's multiple errors.
mhm,
Um, so I just, again, go back to the clear, consistent, concise. I like to keep all of my punctuation the same.
mhm,
So if I put a period at the end of one bullet point, I make sure that it's the same.
mhm, mhm,
That the tenses are all the same,
mhm,
all that, because otherwise the fluff kind of gets distracting.
mhm,
So those, don't overcram, don't use generic language, and don't forget to proofread because that just any extra effort that you can make really helps.
mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. I remember this one particular hiring manager, who didn't look at someone's resume because they found a typo. And they said,
Oh,
if they don't care enough to proofread their resume, why should I care enough to interview them? And while that may not be the fairest thing, or that may, make you overlook a talent, the reality is hiring managers and recruiters kick out resumes for all different types of reasons. So, um, and I really like don't make it too long, because it shouldn't be the recruiter or the hiring manager's burden to look through everything you gave me to find the best
absolutely.
part of you, right? You should just share the best part, the highlighted parts of your experience for
Yeah.
the role itself.
I mean, the internet, I mean, wherever you put it out says you have 6 to 10 seconds with an employer, and hopefully, and we'll get into networking later, hopefully it's a warm lead. So maybe they have a little bit more time, but, they just, with all the applications, they don't have the time. So
Correct.
make it as good as possible.
Mm.
You don't know who's going to be reading it. Great
Absolutely,
point.
and absolutely, either share it with a friend who could proofread it for you, or put it through a grammar type,
Hmm.
word, spelling check. But also one additional tip I would say is don't just take whatever the computer system offers for you to autocorrect. Take a look, because
Yes.
something shouldn't have been corrected, autocorrected, especially some of us who have names who has, a very unique spelling,
Mhm.
or was using an industry word or acronym. Sometimes autocorrect is not correct.
That's such a good point. Yeah.
So uh, you say, don't make it too long, tailor it, highlight. Well, how do I know what to add and what to take off? Some people add hobbies, some people add skills, some people add volunteer work. Should I have 5 bullets per role, bullet points per role? Should I only have, 3 bullet points per role? Like, how do I know what to put in and what to take out?
Absolutely. It's such a great question. And I think so many of those answers are in the job description themselves.
Mm,
And it just comes down to doing your research. So you want to look at the company. You want to look at the hiring manager if you have access to that information. And in today's day and age, it's not too hard to be a detective to find out who is hiring. And you want it to be relevant. So you're really taking those keywords that you find in the job description and you are putting them in your resume, not just randomly, but in a way that speaks to your experience. And sometimes you had mentioned before that the company lingo or the industry lingo. Well, if you notice that the company or the job description has that, you want to use that jargon or vocabulary, however you want to put it. But you want to show that you have that knowledge base, and that there's that synchronicity between the two. And it doesn't have to take 20 minutes. People say, well, why am I going to spend so much time on one resume for a job that I may or may not hear back from? And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's not plagiarizing. It's just making sure that you're utilizing the company's way of thinking it, and while being authentic to yourself. For bullet points, or I'll take it back a little bit. If you got that master resume, so you have this long list of all the things, you want to look at that experience and figure out what they are looking for that you have and where that highlights the most. Recent experience obviously is the most important. And you can tailor that accordingly. But if you have three other jobs where you did pretty much the same thing, you don't need to duplicate. So you want to make sure that you're, again, using that real estate appropriately. And so that you're using their new skills, you're showcasing new skills, progression of jobs, things like that. Volunteer. So if there's an aspect of the company that is, well, maybe it's a nonprofit, or maybe it's, there is a social aspect to it, add in that volunteer work. You can put in hobbies. Sometimes that is takes up too much real estate. But if you know that the hiring manager is really interested in this hobby, um, or there's some aspect of the company, it just shows that you would make a great fit because they want to know who you are as a three-dimensional person, not just as one page. So anywhere that you can do that, there is no hard and fast. You have to put this in. You can't put this in. If you don't have your relevant work experience, then that's probably goes on the don't make the mistake. You want to add that experience, but after a certain time out of high school, you're not going to put that. Usually it's 2 years into college if you go to college. Um, but putting any certifications shows, especially if they're recent or you show a progression, having a certifications area is really great. So that's a long way of saying, just look at the job description and really think about what makes the most sense based on what you have in your master resume. So by putting it all down, taking an hour or however long up front to put all that information in to get those bullet points really good. And then it's a matter of creating that puzzle.
Mm, I like that. You said that earlier, and I really like that concept of sort of having an inventory of everything.
Inventory is a great word.
Education, statements, hobbies, interests, everything, and have it all spell checked, grammatically checked, everything checked. And then really what you're doing is taking a look at your entire inventory
Yeah,
and then piecing together a resume that you feel puts the best version of yourself forward for a particular role at a particular organization,
I
right?
like that.
So hopefully
Yes.
you're correct. You're almost creating a module. You're like, for this job, I'm gonna use this, and this. But if it's all out there, then hopefully it'd be a slightly easier process than starting from scratch every single time.
Yes,
I love that.
absolutely.
I love that. I also love the fact that when in doubt, put in the stuff on your resume that you feel is most relevant to that job and role. So, for example, maybe it's an accounting position, but it is at a um, toy making company. May
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right, and so although it's an accounting position, it's at a toy making company, and so maybe a hobby that you have on making toys is relevant to that job. And so really taking a look at what are the things that are most relevant in your inventory of resume to the role, to the organization, and then if you know, maybe even the hiring manager.
Yeah. That's a perfect way to synthesize. Absolutely.
Um, so How has resume reviewing evolved over time? I mean, in the old days, I don't know how
Back
far
in our
we wanna
back in
go,
our
but
day,
yeah,
yes.
but how far we wanna go, but there was a time where resumes were on paper, and so the
Mhm.
font size, the color paper, the weight of the paper, how
Mm.
you address the envelope all mattered,
The
and
matching envelope to the
Co
paper.
right? I remember that too, and then, a recruiter or the hiring manager used to look at each resume by paper and then put it in a pile, interview pile, don't interview pile, maybe pile, right? That kind of all process. So nowadays, things like ATS, application tracking system, things like AI, things like many just different ways of doing things. How has reviewing resumes evolved over time, and how is it now?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about where you were just sort of talking, that wasn't that long ago. If you really think about it, so things have really changed significantly in a short period of time. Where
Yeah.
you went from the human eye
Mhm.
to sort of, as software and technology started ramping up, that you had more of a hybrid where people could, apply online. They could upload their resume. So now you've got the same eyes, but they're looking at it on a computer or they're printing it out, the ones that are best. And then now it seems like 99% is automated.
Mm,
And, every company has an applicant tracking system. And, it's things like Easy Apply and these enormous job boards have really made it so that people can just click
mm,
submit. And they've
mm,
got that resume that is generic. And that's why they have 8,000. I'm just throwing out numbers, but there are significant numbers of applicants. So now you have this, it seems to be, like I said, 99%. The majority of customer of companies will have these screening systems, and then they will go to the human level. And so it's, sometimes it's on a job board, and then there's that Easy Apply. There's also, it's posted on the company website. So that might be a smaller population. Sometimes there's a way to fast track so it gets around the application tracking system, but it's also still online. Um, and then there might be multiple levels of readers. But, in this day and age, you want efficiency. You want people to be moving as quickly as possible. So again, that's where that 6 to 8 seconds with an employer with a
yeah,
human comes up, which is shocking. I mean,
yeah,
it 10 years ago when I was at the George Washington University, it was 20 seconds, and it's just shifted. And so, people have to adapt accordingly. And some of the things that we've talked about, I think, are really helpful in ways that people talk about wanting to stand out. And it's harder to stand out by having, all sorts of interesting colors or images, because that will get stuck. So, it is a challenge, and I have certainly heard of people doing sort of very different things to try and get noticed, whether it's a differing format on a cover letter or trying it out on a resume, but you just don't know what you're going to be getting. So it really has changed so much. I mean, efficiency, effect. People really want to focus on the impact that the individual will have on the culture. As we really think about the importance of culture in the workplace. So they're looking for that. They're looking for the impact that individuals have had on their previous positions. So knowing that they will be able to, come up and running in the new company and be able to make an impact as well. Um, Transferable skills is something that really people are looking for. Some people call them soft skills, but I think those are essential in terms of really connecting on that human level. That in the end, when, even if there's such a high number of applicants and it's, just a PDF, when you actually get to the hiring part, we're still human and people want to make sure that they can connect with that. So, really think about those transferable skills, um, whatever they may be, but management, leadership, communication skills, problem solving, critical thinking, all these things that seem to be, they're harder to teach now with
Mhm,
technology.
mhm,
That makes sense. And so I think employers are really leaning into them more because they're harder to find,
mm.
you know.
So I'm hearing you say things like, the way employers review resumes have evolved where they're spending even less time on average, even less time than they did before per resume, average of 6 seconds. Um, the other thing is sometimes it may not even be human eyes looking at your resume, maybe, a software, AI, application tracking system, ATS, that's reviewing your resume. And so, uh, abiding by some of the things you talked about earlier, which is highlighting, which is being very, very strategic about what you put on your resume,
Hmm.
as well as really being strategic about the fact that you want to make it as easy for the system and the human to review it as quickly and as rapidly uh, as possible. What are some tools we can use? Um, Obviously, AI is one of them, and we'll get into AI a little bit more because I heard that AI is um, is having all sorts of impacts. So I want to talk about that. I'm going to put AI here for a moment, but other than AI
That's a long
writing
conversation.
your
Yeah.
right, other than AI writing your resume for you, what other tools can people utilize? You talked about that tool earlier about looking up different verbs to
Then
help
Bloom's
you pick.
taxonomy.
Right, for you to pick the best one possible. But what are some other tools that people can use to make this process just a little bit less cumbersome?
Yeah, yeah. And these are the things that I use every day. Certainly not endorsement in any way, but just things that I find myself as a career counselor just using all the time. One specifically speaking to the applicant tracking systems, Job Scan is
Mm,
a really great tool. Sign up for free. You can
mhm,
put your resume and the job description, and it will give you a score, an
mm,
applicant tracking system score.
mm,
And so the higher the score, the better it is, the more aligned it is. And it's really helpful to actually be able to see where you are and how we'll match up. So and putting the actual job description in is a great thing to do. So that one I certainly suggest, especially as people are trying to get around that. It will give you tangible things to change for your resume. So I definitely recommend that. And then we had talked about proofreading. So
mm,
Grammarly
mhm,
is a
mhm,
really good one. I
yep,
mean, you can embed it into your software, in your email. It talks about tone.
mm,
I think that's a really good thing that people overlook.
mm,
Is the tone too casual? Is it I don't want to say robotic? I mean, you wanna make sure that you are a human in
mhm,
the end,
mhm,
um, and that you have some of that tone. And I think that's just really helpful as you're writing this document to be able to put more depth into it. So I'd say Grammarly is a really good one, and for obvious reasons that we talked about before. The grammar, the spell checking, those pieces that consistency and attention to detail are really important. And then finally, you know, everyone seems to know about LinkedIn.
mm.
There are just so many pieces there that I think are really important.
Yes.
Networking is the way to fast track your resume. And LinkedIn was created as a tool to create connections and to connect people of these huge populations into smaller ones. So I always suggest that people use their alumni tool in LinkedIn.
Mm,
So there's a way that you can find of any institution that you've been in. You can also, I mean, there's so many ways. If that's the connecting piece, then there's also the sort of as you're thinking about career exploration and career preparation, you can see what other people say. You have an idea of a job that you want to be in. Well, you can find those people and you can look at the job trajectory that they've had. Where
Mm,
have they gone? No two people's careers are exactly the same, but it certainly gives some vocabulary in terms of the skills and the certain experiences that you can use. So you could use similar wording in your resume if you have similar skills. That kind of where you're really building your repertoire of what to put. And it's so you can kind of do that passively. You can also connect with people to see, well, I'd love to spend 5 to 10 minutes with you to see how you got to where you are.
mm,
It's those kinds of aspects. There's LinkedIn Learning, um, where you can skill up. If you find a big gap in where you want to be and where you are, those kinds of things. So any of those online learning, I think, is really important. But in terms of specifically writing your resume, that's a way that you can add certifications, you can add skills through those courses, and then really finding the vocabulary and the experience needed for your resume. So those 3, I'd say the job scan, Grammarly, and LinkedIn. Sure, people have lots of others, and I'd love to hear them. I'm always, I have a
mhm,
little bookmark folder with all of my career resources,
mm.
so I can just go to those, and it just makes it a lot easier.
I love it. I love it. And for those of you who are tuning in, if you have other tools that you want to recommend, put it in the comment section. But I love the concept of using a tool like JobScan because for those who may be wondering, well, how would a application tracking system look at my resume when it comes to a job description like this? It at least gives you a starting point, right? It gives you at least a score for you to go, all right, I'm kind of there, or I'm not anywhere near that at all. So absolutely a good tool to have. And then some of us are just not that great at grammar naturally, or, that was
Absolutely.
always a subject that we weren't good at. Might as well use a tool that at least points out some things for you to take a look at so that you can make a decision for yourself if you want to correct that or if that's not really what you meant and things like that. And LinkedIn, I want to dive a little bit more into LinkedIn because there's a saying that you get a job based on who you know.
Mm,
And fair
yeah.
or unfair as it may be, the truth of it is 80% of jobs are gotten through some sort of a
Yes,
referral or networking or
absolutely.
connection. So talk a little bit about how to leverage networking a little bit more, rather it's in LinkedIn or by other ways for job search and for resume writing.
I think that's such a good. I'm glad you brought that up because that's just it's such an important piece these days as we talk about the unprecedented numbers of applications that are going on that are being submitted online.
Mm,
That that hidden job market that people talk about. It just seems to be this like new term where it is. It's just that 80% of jobs are not posted online.
right.
And it's the more people that you talk to, they might think of an opportunity for you. And that happened to me when I was early on in my career. I was working a temporary job and started talking to the people at the company and said, I'm really looking for this kind of an opportunity. And they said, well, we've been thinking about this position that I think really align with where you want to go. And it also serves our purpose. And so I was hired into that position and now it's, a much bigger program. And but if I hadn't said that, people wouldn't have known. If I hadn't taken the time to, grab lunch, desk lunch with some people at that firm or, work with other people across the university to find other areas that where my skills felt like a better fit. It's this job pivot, or we talk about career pivots where you don't know what's out there until you really talk to people. And they don't know that you're looking, and you might be the person that they are looking for, and they just don't know it, or they haven't realized that they need this in their company, and so that's where some of that 80% is internal hires, but a lot of it is the creation of positions based on need or based on like newly understood need. And if you're out there not asking people for jobs, but out there saying, "Hey, I want to learn more about your career trajectory, or I want to learn more about how you got to where you are, or where your company is going." That just makes a much warmer lead. and that you're kind of stuck in the back of people's heads as they're looking because people are hiring and people need jobs are always changing. So, being able to know what's out there and know how the industries are shifting, it's really helpful. So I'm
Mm.
glad that you brought that up because that is really people ask me about that all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, it is the reality of it, right? And so, LinkedIn is a great way for you to grow your network as well as to leverage your network. I was on a different video. I was talking to Jenny, who is a talent consultant and has been in talent conversations in many different organizations. And she said, "Network before you need a network."
Mhm.
And I think that's we always go, "Oh, I need a new job. Let me network now." And so what we say is network all the time, you know, and some of the ways to network in LinkedIn is to maybe send direct messages and say, "Tell me more about the industry. Tell me more about your role." Or, "I really like that post that you just posted the other day. It really resonated with me. Can we have a 10-15 minute call for me to understand sort of your industry?" And if you do that more, then it's easier to reach out and say, "Oh, I see a job posting here on LinkedIn. Can I connect with you to talk to you a little bit more about that?" So you've sort of warmed that relationship as opposed to just reaching out cold. Is that fair to
Yeah.
say?
Yes, absolutely. And also sort of keeping reaching back in your past. So
Yeah.
keeping in touch with mentors and previous supervisors. And, you don't want to just reach out for that recommendation when you haven't talked to them for a little while. And we've all been that we're not perfect, but it just makes it that much easier of an ask. So it's may seem hard to some people, but if it's just always in the back of your head, the better you get at it, or the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Mm,
It just
absolutely.
becomes
You may leave an organization, but you don't have to leave your good connections behind, right?
it's so true. It's so true.
Um, yeah. And
It's
your connection doesn't have to be limited by and your connections doesn't have to be limited by the organizations you have worked in. You
yeah,
could ask people, "Hey, Chrissy, it was great to talk to you. Is there some other people that I could connect with
I love
that may
that.
know this role or know this industry?" So, kind of constantly expanding it is
I
always
love that.
helpful. Yeah,
Yeah, keeping it open.
keeping it
So
open.
that you're not stuck with
Absolutely.
that spider network. It's not I think it's often used as sort of a like who has the most power and who has the most social capital, but it's really about how you're helping those connections. And maybe there's something that you come across that you've had, conversation with someone a few months back and they were talking about this and you can connect it back. Like, oh, I did this research or I did this study or I saw this. Maybe that would be helpful for you.
Mm,
And so it's not a one-way street
mm.
that you can see where you can help them as well. So
Mm, absolutely. And the reality is, again, fair or not fair, the reality is sometimes we an employer gets hundreds of resumes for one role. It makes a difference if someone they trust refers a person to me. At
yes,
least at a minimum, we'll look at their resume a little longer than 6 seconds if
agreed.
it was
Agreed. Even if it's just to get that. Absolutely.
correct.
Perfect.
Correct. So let's talk about AI for a moment. So I'm reading headlines like, "Oh, employers getting hundreds of resumes cranked out by AI," and they're sort of drowning in resumes. Um, some applicants are like, "I don't know how to play this AI game. How
Mhm.
do I best utilize it?" Um, the other part I hear is, AI is making me not sound like me. But is this what employers are looking for nowadays? Um, and so talk to me, what role should AI play in writing your resume?
That's such a good question because it is a hot topic now and it's not going away.
Yeah.
And so some people despise it, don't want to touch it at all. But I think there is a safe way that we can leverage what it what it does. And I think the most important thing that I can put out there is to not put your personal contact information on there. I see that a lot where people are uploading their entire resume
Mm,
into this network that we don't even know about.
Mm,
we can't fully understand how it's being utilized.
mm,
Maybe someone can tell me more more about that, but protecting yourself is really important. So using it to draft and brainstorm bullet points. So using prompts to adhere to certain industry vocabulary. I think
mm,
that's a really great way to be,
mm,
to talk about when we were talking about the quantification and the qualification. That's also a place where you need to be careful because it's blatantly wrong.
right, right,
So, to proofread first of all, but also to make sure that it's not just making up stuff because I've seen that time and again,
mm,
and it just you can be called out on it. It could just be completely wrong and have your resume go in a completely different direction where you don't want it to go. And it's just not a replacement for your own voice. I think employers are getting tired of seeing the same thing, and there is a certainly a format to it that if you do it enough, you see the same thing going over and over and over again. And some people can really spot that. There's also the advent of these sort of anti AI, or I would say more of AI detectors.
mhm,
Those are also flawed.
mm,
I have had coworkers sort of test it out by writing their own blurb
mm,
and then using an applicant tracking system, or detector AI detector on it, and it said that it's 90% AI,
mm,
and they use their own voice.
mm,
I'm hoping that employers are getting savvy to that as well, that that's flawed. But
mhm,
again, things are changing at such a rapid way or such a rapid pace that it's tough. So you want to use it for efficiency, certainly. We all understand we were busy and we have lots of things going on, but not to just go on autopilot.
mm,
To just say, "Here's my resume. Here's the job. Make me look good."
mm,
But just to understand what other. I think gap analysis is a phenomenal use. So here's my resume without the personal contact information. Um, Here's a job opportunity that I'm looking at. Where are the gaps? And using that to skill up and to either add that from, so say it's not your master resume that you have, say it's, this tailored resume. So you can look back in your experience and think about, oh, wait, I actually do have that and
mm,
add that in.
mm,
So I think that can just be really helpful in your strategy as you talked about it. But it's a runaway train in so many ways, so it has to be used really carefully and responsibly. But I don't think people should be ashamed of using it.
mhm,
That it really can be helpful of sort of pulling words out of you that you didn't know you had.
mhm,
But I've heard from a number of employees that have asked someone for an interview,
mm.
and then they get to the interview and it's a completely different person.
Right, I heard
It's
that too.
not reflective.
Right.
And, that's so frustrating to realize that. So I think that's why people are really paying more attention to AI being used for resumes. So
Mm,
again, it's a great tool and it's not going away, but we have to use it carefully and responsibly.
mm. I hear you loud and clear. I think because, let's face it, applying for jobs is exhausting. It's mentally exhausting. It's physically exhausting. You're always wondering, should I have done this? Should I have done that? And it's also, very disheartening when you put out a lot of resumes and you don't get much back. And so I don't want to minimize the undertaking it takes to look for a new role and to tailor resumes and so forth. And that's where AI could come in. Use AI to allow you to see things you may have missed, allow you to, highlight yourself better, but don't use AI to replace you, right? I mean, so use AI as a tool to enhance you, to make you look better on a resume or to highlight your strengths better, but not to necessarily replace you,
Yeah.
because not only is it harmful in terms of um, you may actually not get selected because your resume sounds so generic, but it also may be harmful where um, you know. you're sharing a version of you that's not true. Um,
And that will be seen, those
and it
kinds
will
of
be
things come to
seen
light. They come to light,
100%.
so yeah.
Um, I want to touch and highlight a few things as well as kind of talk about the application of a lot of the things that you shared with us today. So, one thing I want to highlight and go back to is I loved you saying you like to use the words relevant experience on your resume because there's a difference between resume and job application.
Mhm.
Job application is when you have to list every experience and every organization you've been in. Resume is sort of a marketing tool for your experience, education, and skills. So you could put relevant experience on your resume, thus giving you some permission to not list some things that you feel is completely irrelevant to the role that you're applying for. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think that's perfect, the way that you said that. It's especially when people have 30, 40-year
Yeah,
careers and
yeah,
people aren't staying in the same company for
right,
that long, it should be understood by a responsible hiring manager that there are going to not everything is going to be listed.
right,
You don't want to read that.
right,
3 pages, 4 pages.
right.
So the relevant experience gets you, and it kind of explains why you might have a career gap. I mean, people have career gaps or pauses for all different reasons.
100%.
And I think I'm seeing a leaning into that and understanding that that is not only okay, but it's normal.
Mm,
And, but also realizing that not you might have a little bit of time where you kind of went this way in your career and then
right,
now you're coming back this way. And
right.
so, um, just being able to be concise with that. Yeah,
Mm.
that's a perfect way to put it. Yeah.
I love it. Relevant experience. I love
Relevant
it.
experience.
Um, absolutely, because it doesn't make sense to use, what prime real estate on your resume to list every single role you've ever had. Um,
Well, and just to touch on that, just one little bit more, I mean, especially for those who are just starting out, a lot of people worry about the job experience meaning something that they got paid for.
mm,
So often I will talk
mm,
about, volunteer experience or leadership experience. Especially again for those who are starting out, that it doesn't all have to be work that you've been paid for, that it can be, and it's often more rewarding and value add in those situations. And so I encourage people to kind of not bend it, but it just to utilize it, because that is such integral parts of them and their skill development. And so being able to add that in as a legitimate experience to put on there that will help them.
mm. I like it. I like it. Um, you know, listing experiences that you've had that are legitimate experiences, not necessarily something that you got paid for, but that you actually have legitimate experience doing it. Like you're a project manager for an organization that you volunteered for six
Mhm.
months. And
Yeah,
you're applying for a project management role. That may be something you want to put as relevant experience. Got it.
absolutely.
Got it.
Absolutely.
So talk to me about how some of us, are pivoting from one career or one industry into another.
Mhm.
How do you how do you tailor your resume for when you're pivoting career paths or pivoting industries?
Yeah, I think again it goes back to some of the research that you can do. So if it's on LinkedIn, if it's on the company website, it's utilizing their language with those transferable skills.
Mm,
So it's not as hard as people, unless there's certifications involved, that there are ways that you can use your past experience, even if it's not in the same industry, to show the impact that you will have in this new industry or this new type of role.
mm,
Um, so that's obviously there's some experiences where you wouldn't be able to go from like being an electrician to being a plumber. There's real certifications and job work that you need to do that are the hard skills. But then when we're talking about soft skills like customer service or critical thinking, being able to upscale software development or something like that, where it can be utilized in other areas, or training and development. marketing that can be utilized in a lot of different industries. And just being able to show that you understand this new industry, and being able to highlight the impact that you could have on that. I think that's just really helpful. And it just kind of goes back to really thinking deeply about your experience and how you can present that in a slightly different manner, um, for a different industry. I mean, people are just they're pivoting, and we have in 10 years there'll be jobs that we don't even know about yet, that they're still to be, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't use those transferable skills to be competitive candidates for those.
Mhm.
So it's that kind of being nimble
Mm,
with the way that you present yourself, I think is one way to put it.
mm. So it sounds like, if you're going from one industry to another or one particular type of career path into another career path, take a look at what role or industry you're looking to apply for or get into and pull out from your current and past experiences things that are relevant and transferable into that role. So to use the example of, being an electrician doesn't mean you could be a plumber, but from being an electrician, you know about meeting deadlines, about
Mhm.
dealing with customers, about doing an accurate estimate, all those type of things, and you can highlight those as you apply for,
Perfect.
your new role. Uh,
Absolutely.
makes
So
Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just say it sometimes it just takes a little bit of sleuthing to kind of find where those connections are. Um, but it's certainly worthwhile, and understanding why it is that you want to be in this industry, or what it is that you value about it,
Mm,
and being able to show that in words. I mean, that's again where networking comes in, because you can do that a little bit better in person, than maybe on a resume. But there are ways to do it that way as well.
mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. And on your resume, you could put that you're in the middle of getting certified to be a plumber, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
so that shows that you're also catching up on the hard skills as well, not just the
Absolutely.
transferable skills. Makes perfect sense. Um, we didn't talk about this cover letter. If it's optional, yes or no, and what should be in it?
Interesting if it's optional. I
Because
don't
I've
think.
seen some that says cover letter optional. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Um, I always say go for it. I think there are ways that you can create templates that are not just cut and paste, but that you can help tailor. But it's another way of being able to present more in-depth expertise. So you can use 2, 3 examples, and it doesn't have to be from 10 different positions that you've had. But if you think about, a couple of different positions and the jobs, or the experience that they're looking for, and how you can show that you have that experience, it's sort of that storytelling aspect that, where you can go more in depth and really curate that piece more so than the resume.
Mm.
So if you have the opportunity, I think you're missing out if you don't.
Yeah, might as well, especially if you're pivoting from one career
Yes.
to the other. You
Yes.
it becomes sort of a voiceover
Yeah.
and a narrative, right? You could say,
Yeah.
"I
And
used to
just explain.
be." Yeah.
Yeah. Explain it a little bit more. Say what you love about the opportunity, or this in particular the company. It's another way to showcase that you've done your research on the company. You love these values, um, or some of their mission, where they're going, and how you could impact that. So, yeah, I would not say no to anyone
Might as
who's
well, right?
like,
If you have
"Where's
that
me?"
opportunity to
For sure, yeah.
add another layer of what highlights you. Absolutely. Um, can you talk a little bit about how to stay this isn't directly about resume writing, but in your experience with careers and experience being adjunct professor, working with students and then also being, working with people at different stages of their career, any words of advice of how to not be discouraged in your job search? Um, like I said, it's a very vulnerable moment, and so any advice you have about staying centered
Yeah.
during job searches? It may
It
take months, some tell me years, so,
absolutely.
yeah, share any thoughts or advice you have.
Yeah, I mean, depending on the person, it could be meditation, it could be yoga, and, speaking of recentering, if it's taking deep breaths, if it's going for a walk. Obviously, these are all sort of physical, connecting your mind to your body. I think those are really good ways to keep centered and to keep, the eye on the prize in that sense, of just reminding yourself of where you are. For those who are not as into that, I think keeping a record of the wins that you've had, or the progress that you've made. Um, I have a job template or job search template that I utilize with my clients, just to be able to see the sheer number or the work that they have done, or keeping connected with how many people they've networked with. Those kinds of things that any that's all in the right direction. Some people really like to have motivational quotes.
Mm,
So writing them all over the place. Just that, these affirmations of why you're doing it. It's if it's not just about the job, it's about the experience, or it's finding that home. Some people, obviously, I understand also that that is a financial thing, that not everyone can wait for that perfect job. Um, but any way to get centered, because and acknowledging it, that this is not easy, taking time to acknowledge that and grieve that. Finding other people who are job seeking. I think, just to share tips,
mhm,
to have a community. Um, I really love that people are um, leaning in and LinkedIn to open for work.
mm,
Just that little tag that's telling people that they are open, and especially with there's been more being laid off. That there are ways that we can help each other.
mm,
And I just really like that people are leaning into that, and rather than feeling like it's a stigma.
mhm,
Because sometimes if there is a layoff, there can be a large emotional impact as well. And being able to find that center, and to also find the communities that are out there. There are some incredible communities out there that are doing pro bono career work.
mhm,
I've worked with a number of them, just to help people, and so being able to see those glimpses of humanity, and the support that is out there, and figuring out what works best for those people, because I've been in that situation. It certainly is not an easy one to be in. Um, but to see the small gains, to center yourself as best you can, to surround yourself with people who are supporting you and positive, um,
mm,
just to be able to mark your progress too
mm.
is really important.
Agree, agree. To add to that, some of things that may also work is just telling yourself that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you get
Mm,
the new role. The when may be long, but it is a matter of when, not if. The second thing is to give yourself some sort of a goal and say, this week I'm going to apply for X amount of jobs, and be satisfied when you do, instead of always wondering, should I be applying more?
yeah.
And it is hard to tailor resumes and cover letters. So pick and choosing the roles and the organization that you're really interested in, tailoring those, and maybe others you don't tailor as much to save some energy.
Yeah.
Um, and then the third thing I would say to that is, apply for jobs, interview for jobs, network way before you need another one.
Mm,
Just to keep your skills of interviewing up and running, just so that you have a better understanding of what's out there, just so that you keep your options open. Um, I think gone are those days where a job and a role has to end before you look for another one. Um,
right.
I know a lot of recruiters who are doing passive outreaches. You may not have applied, but your current role fits the person and the skill set we're looking for. I know recruiters who reach out and say, "I know you're not looking. It doesn't look like you're looking, but would you possibly be interested in talking about this role?" So I would say, just those 3, things.
Those are
Um,
great.
and then, like you said, network with other people who may also be looking just so that you don't feel like you're alone. The last advice I have is don't compare yourself to others.
That's so good.
Right? Don't
Oh,
be like, "Well, that person got
yeah.
laid off the same time and they already have a job." Well, it's not about them, it's about you, right? We do that all the
Absolutely.
time.
All the time. I mean, just for anyone. I mean, it's tough, and industries can be different, and circumstances, and just making sure that we're opening ourselves up to as many opportunities as possible, and not shutting those down. They say it's easier to get a job when you already have a job. But that obviously doesn't apply to everyone,
Yeah,
because that can
doesn't
be really frustrating to be in that circumstance. But
mm. Well, we covered a lot. Is there anything that we haven't covered or something that we have covered that you wanna highlight a little bit more? Any other advice or thoughts about putting the best resume forward?
yeah, I mean, I will say again, if you ask 10 people for advice, they're going to tell you 10 different things. So some of it is just doing what works best for you.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what I've said today may not resonate with everybody. They might have other experiences um, where something else has worked, a different template or something. But really making sure that you're being authentic to yourself, because you can't do absolutely everything every time. But it's small steps to make yourself the best possible candidate. And the tailoring, we talked about that. I think that's really the most important part. Where you can, as you said, conserving your energy, or saving your energy for the really really good ones. But and exploring some of this new technology in a safe and responsible way, that can really help out. So it's certainly it's something that I think is so important, and people kind of think, oh, I have to update my resume, and I think every time I ask people, well, how's your resume? Right. Right. But, do that for yourself. You know, d- Give yourself a solid and look at that resume and make sure that it is ready to go, to the best of your ability for that recruiter who might just reach out and say, I know you're not looking. Well, what about this?
absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, some of us find it hard to talk about ourselves or write about ourselves. So sometimes that's another hurdle. But having sort of a master resume, tailoring it as you see fit, creating a resume before you even need a resume, all of that stuff helps.
Yeah.
Um,
Shameless plug to find a career counselor or a friend.
Absolutely. I
you
was
know,
just
someone
about
else. Yeah.
someone else. Sometimes if you need that additional something that'll help you along, might as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
And those of you who want to reach out to Chrissy, her information is in the description below as well. So thank you so much for spending the time with us to share your knowledge and expertise about putting your best self forward on your resume. Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you for having me. This has been such a blast.
Thank you. Everyone else today, it was all about how to put out the best resume you can to get that job that you want. So, hopefully you found it useful. Feel free to comment, like, and subscribe to this channel to get more content about getting the jobs you need and having the career that you want.